The random bashing of British pop singer Tom Grennan on a Manhattan street on Thursday night may have come as shock to him, but it wasn't a surprise to New Yorkers. Hours after finishing a gig in the city, the performer of Little Bit of Love, one of the most acclaimed songs of last year, was assaulted in what his management said was an unprovoked attack and robbery outside a bar. Tom is currently being assessed by doctors for his injuries, which include a ruptured ear, torn eardrum, and issue with his previously fractured jaw. Crime and violence are a perennial aspect of New York streets, but even for residents who used to be on their guard, the last few months have been unnerving with surging crime rates and some exceptionally cruel and arbitrary incidents. It's being called the stuff of nightmares, fueled by rage and randomness. There are concerns rising crime could deter tourists from coming back to one of the world's greatest cities and keep commuters at home rather than returning to the office. In February, overall crime in the city went up 58.7%, compared to the same month in 2021. Theft was up 79%, assault by 22%, and murder by 10%. Only shootings were down by a mere 1%, according to New York Police Department NYPD data. The city's new mayor has insisted New York will not be surrendered to the violent few. And while New York's hardscrabble suburbs remain at the epicenter, bizarre violent crimes are cropping up even in tourist hotspots. Bizarre. Callous crimes on bystanders. In March, 2 employees of the famed Museum of Modern Art were stabbed after a man jumped and confronted them reportedly after his membership to the storied institution had been revoked. He was alleged to have attacked the staff members when they refused to allow him entry to see a film. A 34-year-old woman was stabbed when she intervened in an attempted robbery at the 34th St. Harold Square subway station, one of the busiest on the network, and just moments from the visitor honeypots of the Macy's department store and the Empire State Building. In February, a 34-year-old man was caught on CCTV brutally punching and flooring a 4-year-old child in broad daylight in the middle of Times Square. Then there are the deaths. Police continue to search for a gunman who in March casually wandered up to a homeless man sleeping in the city's downtown area, looked around to see if anyone was watching, and then shot him dead at point-blank range. The whole episode was recorded on chilling camera footage. In February, Christina Unali died after being stabbed more than 40 times by a man who followed her into her Chinatown apartment and up several flights of stairs. NYPD figures show hate crime is up 189% year-on-year, with attacks against Asian and Jewish people increasing the most. Add to that the kids caught in the crossfire. In just the last 4 weeks, 2 children have died after finding themselves in the middle of shooting incidents, including a 12-year-old boy who perished as he ate dinner in a parked car. Tourists frightened away. And of course, there was the bizarre Brooklyn subway shooting earlier this month in which 29 people were injured after the attacker let off smoke canisters and began shooting during the peak hour. Only a jammed gun may have prevented greater injury, reports have said. Crimes on public transport, including the subway, are up 73%. Michael Goodwin, a columnist with the New York Post, said the subway attack was the stuff of nightmares and there was a danger it could lead to an exodus from the city. People who might have come here to visit or live from around the world will be frightened away. They will be noticed only by their absence. The New York Post reported that the only police precinct in which crime fell was the one covering Central Park. Only the squirrels are safe, an officer told the paper. Tourists will never come back. A recent survey by pollster Quinnipiac University found 65% of New Yorkers were personally worried they would be a victim of crime, the highest figure since polling began in 1999, reported Fox News. I don't feel safe anymore. I would rather take the bus for 2 hours versus taking the train for 45 minutes, subway commuter Nicole Robinson told America's ABC network. Rage and randomness. In previous crime waves, much of the nefariousness was between drug gangs or due to opportunistic robberies. That still occurs, but there's something different now too. Randomness is the key variable that increases the fear, and a lot of people, said Christopher Harriman, an assistant professor at New York's John Jay College of Criminal Justice. If I am an average citizen who just takes the subway, I have zero fear or risk of being a victim of a crime. Throw the randomness thing in, and everyone becomes a potential target or a potential victim. That's what worries a lot of people, he told the New York Times. Prof. Harriman said mental health and a lack of care and management of people with those issues could be a factor in driving up crime. It's not the only factor, however. Some criminals appear more brazen. There have also been controversial changes to bail laws, enacted by previous state Governor Andrew Cuomo, which reduced the number of crimes for which suspects could be locked up while awaiting trial. Critics have said that has led dangerous people to continue walking the streets. However, the lessening of the pandemic has also had an effect. There are many more people on the streets and on the subway mingling together, meaning a rise in crime was almost inevitable. And while crime has gone up, it's still nowhere near the peak of the 1980s and early 90s. In 1990, the city saw around 2,200 murders. In 2021, it was 485. Criminals posing as asylum seekers are turning American cities into war zones. The Venezuelan gang Tren de Aragua, feared for how it tortures its victims, is setting up shop in New York City, police sources revealed to the Post. Gang members recruit migrants from shelters and as they come off buses from Texas, putting them to work in retail theft rings or on mopeds grabbing phones and handbags and roughing up pedestrians. After his first run-in with cops, the shelter system should have been notified and evicted Figueroa. Chicago is also being terrorized. Professional criminals enlist migrants from the shelters to raid luxury stores at the suburban Oakbrook Center Mall, 5 miles west of the city. These migrants wouldn't have a clue where Oakbrook, an upscale suburb, is or how to get there without the criminal masterminds. South American gangs are turning suburban malls into danger zones, explains retired Riverside IL Police Chief Tom Weitzel. You're at one of the suburban malls, he says, pushing your kids in a stroller and you can get caught in the violence. A lot more crossing the border or criminals or have criminal intent than is being publicly said, Weitzel adds. Revealed brutally violent Venezuelan Tren de Aragua gang is using migrant wave to launch NYC phone robbery spree. Paul Morrow, a retired NYPD inspector, agrees. The claim that Venezuela is emptying its prisons is accurate, he suggests. Blame President Biden's open borders, but also the soft-on-crime Democrats in New York and Illinois, whose policies almost guarantee migrant criminals can rob and assault without ever going to jail. NYPD Chief of Detectives Joseph Kinney observes that the network of thieves lives mostly in the shelter system. That included the migrants who beat up 2 cops in Times Square last month. They had a string of previous arrests but were still living in shelters courtesy of New York taxpayers. Adams is imposing an 11 p.m. curfew at some shelters. That's window dressing. Providing room and board to the same people who rob and threaten U.S. makes no sense. Once migrants get in trouble with the law, the shelter system should be notified and evict them.